All right, we are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Grid Encore. I'm Ben Schneider, joined, as always, by my co-host, Brandon Crosland. Brandon, how are you doing tonight? I see a little bit of a different background for you this evening.
Yes, not by choice, but a different background for this evening. But still, nonetheless, it is a Motor Monday here on Grid Encore. Yeah, something about the PC not liking me using a bunch of all the USB ports. I guess after 6 months, it's caught up with me, and for some reason, it's given a problem. So it's out in the proverbial shop for the week. So hopefully, we'll have it back by next Monday, or if not, this is going to have to do. We're gonna live, laugh, love until the cows come home.
Now, we will soldier on and survive here. The show must go on. And thank you all again for tuning in here. We've got a weekend of racing at Bristol to recap, the ARCA and ARCA East combo race, the championship for the ARCA East race, and major championship implications as well to talk about. Connor Zilisch came into the day just having to survive. Unfortunately for him, he did not, and we'll lead in with that in just a moment. But also later to come here, a NASCAR Truck Series race later that night. Connor Zilisch was on the pole for that, and a certain driver, I think, really ruined the opportunity to make the NASCAR playoffs here. Imagine if Layne Riggs had started with opening wins and been a part of the playoff grid, but he's going to be capped at 11th in points, unfortunately. And then lots to talk about in Xfinity as well. A massive comeback for Cole Custer to steal the regular season title. And was this the last time we'll see Dale Jr. in one of his Xfinity Series one-offs? We'll get into all that and much more as the show goes on here. But first, as always, I want to give a shout out to our Patreon supporters here, investors, Colin Deschelle, Mark, Robin, David, and Matthew. Thank you all so much for your continued support of the Grid Network. And if you like what you see tonight, if you liked what you've seen, if you're a regular viewer of this channel and you want to continue to support our work here and find a way to help us get to the track on a more regular basis next season, or even just upgrade some of our streams here on a weekly basis here for you all, you can join these fine individuals and support us through Patreon, or if you'd rather make a one-time contribution to us instead, we have the Buy Me a Coffee link in the description box below as well. Or if you're watching on YouTube, we have super chats and super thanks now enabled, so you can contribute that way if you so choose. Now, let's start off with the ARCA and ARCA East combo race. And like I mentioned in the intro, Connor Zilisch came in with a solid points lead, really just needed to survive, come home, and get a top 10. If you've been following Connor Zilisch at all in ARCA this year, you'll know that he's basically been a lock for a top 2 finish. Most of the time he's been parking in victory lane, so a top 10 everybody thought would be a surefire thing, and it looked like it would be a surefire thing for him, starting again on the front row with William Sawalich for 28, the 18. How many times have we seen those two cars running 1-2, one in front of the other this season? Unfortunately for Zilisch, however, he got caught up in an incident not of his own doing, and we'll get into the details behind that in just a moment, because it's an unfortunate situation, and probably fortunate that we didn't do a Women in Motorsports show last week to give us a little bit more time to hear everybody's side of the story and digest what went down here, because we were originally planning on recording that between the ARCA and truck race. Some scheduling issues came up with Joe, and Isha wasn't feeling well, so we're going to do that hopefully later this week. We've got an F1 Academy race to recap as well, so you all can stay tuned for that in a few days here. But from what we saw on social media from Logan Misaraka the next day, she certainly has some thoughts on what went down. But first, we have to talk about the young man who stole the championship away and won the race in doing so, probably on a very similar career path to Connor Zilisch. That is William Sawalich. So, Brandon, again, I know people say that he's in the only really Cup-affiliated car in the ARCA Menards series. He has an unfair equipment advantage, but he's still going out and doing everything that he needs to do. The second year in a row now, he's the ARCA East champion, and could very well, like Connor Zilisch, be in a Gibbs car full-time in Xfinity next year. When he turns 18 next month, he'll be eligible for that. So what's your reaction to him winning the ARCA East title once again?
It's one of the two names we thought was going to be there, either Sawalich or Zilisch. So really no surprise, Ben, at all. And you said it, they're the two that we think are going to take that ABC path, but maybe skip a few and go straight to the B for the Xfinity Series. And certainly Zilisch is already on that radar. We talked about him as being the next Jeff Gordon, not a next Jeff Gordon, but the next Jeff Gordon last Monday, a big talking point. But you could certainly put Sawalich somewhere in those ranks, wherever you'd prefer, in your opinion, right now. But yeah, being the only the only Cup affiliated car in the ARCA Menards series and ARCA Menards East, he's got a little bit of an advantage of an advantage there to say the least. But he is he's definitely one of the top talents there, and showed it. And it really could have gone either way there with Sawalich or Zilich, but Sawalich, no surprise to do that, and no surprise to be moving up as quickly as he's going to within just the next year or 2 years.
Yeah, certainly successful season for him, and again defending his championship from last year and scoring yet another win. Ultimately, I think what we're going to see from him next year in Xfinity is ultimately the next step for him to take. And as we saw with Connor Zilisch winning on debut at Watkins Glen, wouldn't put similar performances like that past William Sawalich either, with the talent that he's shown in the ARCA Menard Series. And really, when you think about it, his predecessor in that ARCA 18 car, Ty Gibbs, what did he do in his Xfinity Series debut? Was the last driver before Connor Zilisch to win in his first Xfinity race. So a lot of talent over the Toyota pipeline in that organization, particularly with that car in the ARCA Menard Series. So congratulations again to William Sawalich. But again, at the same time, we have to talk about Connor Zilisch here and break down what led up to this. And again, I mentioned talking about this on Women in Motorsports this week. Unfortunately, it does involve two of the women that were competing in this race, Amber Balkin and Logan Misaraka. The two of them had made contact earlier in the race. That sent Logan Misaraka around. And even a third female driver, Tony Breininger, teammate to Amber Balkin, kind of got caught up in that stack up there. We'll pull the first page of the results up here for you. Tony was able to still soldier on and only lost one lap throughout the race, so she came home with a solid 12th place finish. Balkin and Misaraka, though, unfortunately not as lucky. They came together a second time, and this was ultimately the incident that Zilisch got caught up in. Now, it was kind of hard to tell from the angles and replays that we were given. I thought, looking at it in real time, that whether it was intentional or not, whether there was any malicious intent behind it or not, that Balkin had kind of come down and doored Misaraka on the inside. That sent the number 9 car around, and Misaraka ended up spinning out. And again, looked like she might have been able to continue, but 30 plus degrees of banking in the corners at Bristol, her car started to slide down the track, unfortunately, right into the path of Connor Zilisch. And again, it could have just as easily been anybody else. It's unfortunate that it was the championship leader and one of the two championship protagonists coming into the race. But Brandon, I know you said you got to look at the incident again shortly before we came onto the show. Was there anything that stood out to you as to what went down to ultimately end Connor Zilisch's chances of winning this ARCA East title?
Yeah, it really just comes down, I think, to just being in the wrong place at the wrong time. And with a track like Bristol, there's not much area for you to be in the right place. Really, they're always coming around, always tons of lap down cars in the mix, and so just being there in the wrong spot there for both Misaraka and Balkin, and then Zilisch just happened to be the one there. So really can't put this on them for taking out a championship contender, but yeah, at the same time, it really is up to you whether there was some intention involved as far as the incident itself.
Yeah, and again, this is why I said it's probably good we didn't do a show, because again, it would have been a tight window. We would have had to react to it before hearing everybody's side of the story and all the interviews came out. And I have to say, I really like Matt Weaver, really respect Matt Weaver. He's been doing this a lot longer than I have. He knows more about the sport than he's forgotten more about the sport, I should say, than I'm ever going to know. And if he has evidence that led him to tweet this, I would love to see it. Would love to be proven wrong. But I have to say, I was not a fan of what he tweeted out at 5:45 p.m. the night of the race here, because he was quoting his own tweet and saying ARCA East championship leader Connor Zilisch had nowhere to go when Logan Misaraka spun in front of him. All Zilisch needed to do was finish 12th. Now William Sawalich is poised to capitalize. He quoted that tweet and said, even worse, that appears to have happened because Misaraka went to take a swipe at Amber Balkin in retaliation for their earlier incident. Now, again, if Matt had access to SMT data that I haven't seen yet, I would be happy to be proven wrong here. But looking at it in real time, and again, the FS1 onboard camera was not great because it wasn't showing what Misaraka was doing with the steering wheel in the cockpit. It was panned to the right side of the car, focusing on Balkin. It's, again, seemed to me, at best, it was a racing incident. At worst, it seemed to me like Balkin, again, regardless of intent, came down Elaine a little bit into Misaraka's car, and that ultimately is what got her out of shape and led to her losing control and spinning out. Misaraka's side of the story, she posted this on Instagram, I believe, a day after the race on Friday. And again, if you're not familiar with Logan's story, she has fought and clawed her way back to getting this opportunity to compete in this race this year. We really haven't seen her in ARCA since last season. So she has been, as she says in her post here, after 14 long months on the hunt for sponsorship, preparing for this one ARCA race on my 2024 schedule. It is very unfortunate that this race went as it did. She continues on here and says, but this opportunity led me to such an incredible team that I am so grateful to call family. Our car was so fast. We qualified 13th out of 33 with more to give, and we're looking great going into the race. And then she goes on and says, after preparing and putting in so much effort for this race, for a driver to race you so ridiculously dirty is a shame. As a female in motorsports, we all aim for the men to respect us as drivers, but for the females not to respect each other is truly saddening. Due to events taking place last night, females in motorsports have taken a huge step backwards in this sport. We need to be growing the table, not fighting over a seat. One time is forgiven, that's just racing. 2 times is a target. That's, I think, a clear reference to the second incident that took her out. As a sponsor-funded driver coming from short track and the dirt racing world, I know that retaliation is never the answer, and I stand true to that. I did not and will never retaliate under a green flag condition. And she goes on to say, I will be back and eager. No, this is not a rivalry. My race is elsewhere, but it is motivation. Thank you to my amazing teammates, Andres Perez and LeVar Scott over at Rev Racing. And hopefully she will be back and will be able to prove what she's capable of behind the wheel of an ARCA car. But you can tell clearly, you can just feel the passion in her voice as she's pulling the receipts out. And it was on her Instagram story, so it's been over 24 hours. It's no longer viewable. But from what she posted, she said that she had the brakes locked up, because I think Zilich even said this in his interview, that maybe she hadn't locked the brakes and that's why she was sliding down the track. I don't know. I'm not a scientist. I wasn't great at physics, but I do remember hearing an object in motion tends to stay in motion. And when you spin out on a track that has over 30 degrees of banking in the corner, even if you have the brakes locked up, in a 3,400-pound stock car, I can imagine it's not beyond the reasonable possibility that car might continue to slide down that banking. So again, it's just a really unfortunate situation. I don't know if there was any intent behind what Amber Balkan was doing or how she was racing. It is worth noting that Balkan went on to be involved in a third incident, which she blamed a flat tire on. That ultimately took her out of the race entirely, so she finished 25th, 1 spot ahead of Zilich, who himself was 1 spot ahead of Misaraka. But I hate it for Logan, and I hate it for Connor that it ruined his championship chances here. But I hope that this isn't the end for Logan Misaraka, because I feel like, people, made the ARCA brakes jokes and said that, it was, that she had no business being out there on the track. And I think nothing could be further from the truth. I think if there is any blame to put on any driver in this situation, maybe you could say Balkan should have been racing that hard. Maybe you could say, if anybody lived up to the ARCA brakes stereotype, maybe Zilich, a driver with a little bit more experience, could have seen that and reacted to it a little bit sooner. I'm certainly not blaming Zilich for the incident at all here. Obviously, it's easy to forget he's only 18 with how much success he's already had, but it's just, I don't know. It's a very, very touchy situation, very unfortunate situation, very sensitive situation for everybody involved. Emotions are running high. And, obviously Logan's situation is much different. I mean, Connor's going Xfinity racing next year. He's going to be fine. I don't think missing out on an ARCA East title is ultimately going to ruin his career trajectory. When Logan has this one race this year where she can go out and prove what she's capable of, and it ends like this, it's unfortunate, and I don't think it's necessarily fair, but, you could look at this result not knowing the greater context of things, and it may become harder for her to get an opportunity here in the future. So we'll have to wait and see. I hope we see her back, but it's really unfortunate. And again, I'm glad we had some time to hear everybody's side of the story before we reacted to it on this show. I'm sure we'll revisit it in a few days' time as well, once again on Women in Motorsports. But really just a sad situation for everybody involved.
Yeah, absolutely. Really sad that it all sort of just happened together like that, and no one really wanted the Zilich should be taken out of his championship contention. No one wanted the feud between two female drivers. Or even if it even exists. And the fact that someone's taking going on social media and talking about the being removed from the table, removing a seat from the table, fighting for a seat instead of having more at the table. That sort of thing is it's unfortunate that it had to come through a mixed bag like this.
Yeah, yeah, but I mean, at the same time, I get it. I mean, emotions, have to be running high for her, and it's like we said, she's been well, everything that went into just doing this one race. I think a lot of times people don't understand the business aspect of the sport as well, and that the vast majority of the work that a lot of these drivers are doing, comes outside the race car, trying to find sponsorships, trying to find opportunities to come and do so much as just one race in this series. A series where the race purse certainly does not cover all the expenses. We saw, I think Landon Huffman was the one that was tweeting, this just in comparison to the car store, that there were, maybe two drivers that weren't paying more to be in this race than what the race purse was going to award them. And I assume he's referring to Sawalich and Zilich there. But again, Sawalich's, family's company is on his race car. And, I'm sure Zilich obviously has a lot of backing from Chevrolet as well. So it's unfortunate that this is the world we live in, but I think it leads into kind of this question. And, again, I was talking about this, on Women in Motorsports a couple weeks ago as well, talking about how this was going to be the one remaining track on the ARCA schedule by far that had the most challenges for these drivers. Brandon, we talk about the lack of experience a lot of these drivers have, how expensive this series is, how chaotic races at Bristol can be. This weekend, not a great example, but we've seen it before in the Cup Series, let alone racing in ARCA here. We see the speed differentials between some of these names that you see right here. I mean, was really getting nervous for Brian Clubb there at the start of that race. And again, it's no disrespect to Brian Clubb or Brad Smith or Nate Moeller or any of these guys, but you cannot compare the resources that those teams have to the likes of William Sawalich or Connor Zilich. And I don't want to see anybody get hurt out there, whether it's guys at the front of the field or at the back of the field. So putting all that together, when you look at the ARCA schedule, Brandon, do you think that Bristol is a track that we should be going to?
In my wishes, Ben, my non-realistic wishes, I would wish that we would be able to go to a track like Bristol for ARCA, and it would be very competitive, and because this is the kind of track that I think they need experience at before they go to any higher level. And so I think it's wonderful that they're at Bristol, but when you put boots to the ground, when you actually get to the actual product, we tend to get some instances like this where there are multiple cautions going on, and just not able to hold it together. And the youth, the inexperience, it all kind of gets it shows up quite or much more clearly at a place like Bristol. And so as much as I'd like for it to have a spot, it looks like it is very tough to justify keeping it there. But I hate that, because I really want them to have that sort of experience before they go and make those mistakes at a higher level.
Yeah, I think I totally agree. And again, I think that you bring up a great point about giving these drivers experience, but I don't know. I think the counter to that is probably there are other short tracks out there all across the country where they could get a similar experience here. But I understand that it's a business. I understand that this is great exposure. And by the way, I mean, we shouldn't overlook of course, the current state of the ARCA Menard Series East, and we've talked about this countless times in this show here, how it's more than half of the races are just combo races with Big ARCA now. But the plus side to that, I suppose, is that the ARCA East Championship race is on national television on FS1. ARCA West can't say that. Their spring race at Phoenix is a combo race. Their spring race gets nationally televised. But if you want to watch the West Series finale, you have to have a Flow Racing subscription. So at least this gives East some visibility here in that regard, and I think that's great. And it's great, that you're on a companion date with the NASCAR Cup Series. You get 33. It was really 34 cars. There's a DNS here. I'll make sure to note that in the last car article this week for Mitch Gibson here, credited with a 34th place finish as well. But massive car count by ARCA standards, at least in recent times. Um, I totally get it, but then I look at the race we saw, and I look at how the championship was unfortunately decided here, and I look at these caution laps to green flag lap statistics here. 42.4% of this race was run under caution. Thankfully, from lap 161 to lap 195, we got a 35 lap green flag run. The second longest green flag run, as far as I can tell from these stats here, was 16 laps from lap 48 to 63, and that was when the Misaraka Balkan Zilic incident occurred here. So you take that out of the equation, we struggled to run so much as 15, 16 green flag laps. I don't know. It's just but I don't know what more you can expect realistically. I'm not surprised. I'm thankful that we got a green flag run there at the end. It happened after we had a lot of attrition and the starting parts that pulled off the track, and we've seen some incidents clear out some other cars as well. But I don't know if capping the field size is the answer. I would hope it's not. I would hate to send cars home, but I don't know if that's too many cars, too much of a speed discrepancy. Like I mentioned at the start of the race, especially, you had cars on lap 4. It seemed like that were in danger of going a lap down and powerless to stop it because their equipment just isn't capable of what the equipment that Connor Zilic and William Sawalich have is capable of.
I'll say this: do you think here's another positive? Maybe do you
Sure.
think we would have had Landon Lewis passing for the lead and leading so many laps if we were at maybe Slinger Speedway instead of Bristol?
If Landon Lewis had been at Slinger, I think we might have seen it, but I don't know if
Well,
Landon
just
Lewis.
some other high banked short oval example that we would go to instead.
Yeah, I think, and again, I know you mentioned this before we came on the air. Landon Lewis led 80 laps and became a battle between him and Sawalich for the win after Zilic was taken out. So kudos to him. That's a great result, and that was great to see. But I would think we could see. I mean, Landon Lewis is an ARCA winner. He's a talented driver. I would think we could see that anytime he's in an ARCA race, but we haven't seen him nearly as much as we've seen William Sawalich and Connor Zilic this year. Maybe we don't see him if we're not at Bristol, and that is potentially a silver lining here. And yeah, I mean, I'm just pulling the stats up right now. This is his first start of a year, so it's yeah. I mean, that's the counter to it, I guess. We probably don't see Landon Lewis in this race if we're somewhere other than Bristol. So again, I see both sides of it. It's frustrating to me looking at the state of a series here. And again, I know it's always been this way. You've always had, you've never been able to say the Brad Smiths of the world, can take the fight to William Sawalich on his best day or the Gibbs cars on his best day. But it's just, maybe it's a sign of maturity on my part, looking at this as an adult rather than just as a kid and, being amazed that there's close to 35 race cars on the track at once. But then you look at, the speed discrepancies here, and I don't know. I mean,
It's just roadblocks at that point. You got 35 race cars and it's an ARCA, and I mean we know the back half of the field is slow as heck. So they're just
and you try to cram that high number of cars on only a half-mile short track, high banked, high speed half-mile short track.
you're dodging. You're just in a dodging obstacle course every lap if you're the leaders.
Yeah, and I still have. I was watching that Talladega race, close to, my goodness, what was that? 2015. I feel like 10 years ago now, when Brad Smith went hard into the wall at driver's side of Talladega and had to miss the rest of the year, and that was a very serious situation. I definitely don't want to see him get hurt again, just as much as I don't want to see, somebody like Connor Zilic get hurt. I don't want to see anybody get hurt. I don't think anybody wants to see anybody get hurt, but it leaves the door open for possibilities like that, as safe as these race cars are nowadays. I think we were far from the only ones that were looking at the opening laps here and thinking, man, that doesn't seem safe. I mean, it's just, and again, I understand that a lot of these guys are only out here for a few laps before they pull in and collect their share of the purse here. But I guess you could say kudos to them for recognizing the limitations of their equipment. And Brad Smith got off the track very quickly, didn't try to, and not that he ever tries to cause a problem, but I don't know, man. It's just it's difficult for me to look at what we saw on Thursday between how it unfortunately impacted the championship and seeing the speed differential between the front half and back half of the grid, I don't know, but you get a very entertaining product out of that. But credit to Landon Lewis here, because goodness knows there have been times this year and the previous couple of seasons where the 18 cars led every single lap. We actually had a battle for the win and ultimately a battle for the championship with what happened to Zilich. And Sawalich, to his credit, brought the car across the line, did everything he needed to do, and he is your ARCA East champion. So congratulations to him, and we'll keep an eye on where his career goes here in the future. I think some heavy talk again that this was the same path that he was on here, the same path as Connor Zilich to go Xfinity racing as soon as he turned 18. And to your point, Brandon, kind of go over the traditional ABC, ARCA, Busch to Cup, Busch now being Xfinity. We saw it with Ty Gibbs. We've seen it in the past with other drivers. I think sometimes you don't necessarily need to take a stop in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series on that development ladder. So we'll see if it works for Zilich and Sawalich potentially as well next year.
It's now ATXC.
ATX, yeah.
Learn your ATXCs.
Yeah, or AXC, I guess, just in the case of
yeah,
in a couple of these drivers here. But yeah, the acronym doesn't work quite as well, I guess, but it's the same idea.
It's butchered. It's gone.
All right. Well, that's your ARCA East season. Still a couple of ARCA races to go and an ARCA West season to finish, and we'll keep you all updated on how those wrap up here in the coming weeks here on the Grid Network and on this show, Grid Encore. In the meantime, we move on now to our NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series race. And Brandon, like I teased at the start, second week in a row, we're talking about Layne Riggs winning a playoff race. Unfortunately, though, it doesn't mean much of anything for Layne because he didn't make the playoffs, so he's only going to be able to finish as high as 11th in points here. How much do you think he's regretting having that up and down first half of the season and not being able to get into the playoff grid?
Well, I don't think he's regretting it because he made the decision to have a bad first 3/4 of the year. I don't think anyone in the Craftsman Truck Series is trying to have a bad year, but man, he had a bad year for Front Row Motorsports. And we didn't expect it because we literally saw Zane Smith the year before do so much better in the same truck. And so thinking Layne Riggs coming from South Boston, which is not that Boston. We thought this is a match made in heaven. Short track ace there at Sobo. He's going to do great and win a lot of races. They just didn't come at the right time. But saw the potential, at least from the beginning, that short tracks might be your thing, buddy. So we come to Milwaukee. He's able to get it done. Unfortunately, that was just after the playoffs locked in, and we started our countdown to Phoenix. And so he doubles down after a few weeks off because the Truck Series schedule and wins again at Bristol, which I remember saying after the Milwaukee win, Ben, if he's going to win somewhere else, it's probably going to be these short tracks. And I see another one in the sights as well, Martinsville coming up second to last week. I would mark your calendars for another Layne Riggs win potentially if he can get it done, or if someone doesn't knock him out of the way. He's definitely great at these short tracks. You've got to get the other ones figured out, and I really hope. I mean, with 2 wins, I hope you are, but hope he's back for next year and able to right those wrongs and get into the championship hunt for 2025.
Yeah, well, I'm just looking at these results here, Brandon. And like I mentioned, dreadful start to the year. He had the 33rd place finish at Daytona, and then a strong finish at Atlanta. Unfortunately, disqualified from that race, accredited with 33rd there. So a pair of those finishes to start the year. Then he rebounded a little bit, was 10th at Bristol, a short track, and then really struggled through the stretch of Coda, Martinsville. Got a top 15 there at least, but Texas, Kansas, Darlington, really nowhere to be seen. And then this is where the up and down period started here. 3rd at North Wilkesboro, a short track, 28th at Charlotte, 5th at Gateway. Probably as long of a short track style track as you could potentially have here. I'd say maybe if it's more of an intermediate, but races like a short track in some perspectives, I guess, there. So 5th place there, and then 25th at Nashville, 30th at Pocono. And then he's been on fire these last few short track races. 5th at IRP, 5th at Richmond, and then back-to-back wins at Milwaukee and Bristol. So to your point, he's got the short tracks figured down. If he can figure out the intermediates, the road courses, the super speedways, and all those tracks, and I mean, if he had just won one of those short track races, that would have been enough. to punch his ticket to the playoffs here. But if he can do that, we'll see how he does when we get to Phoenix here to crown our champion here. If he can steal a win there or not, obviously not going to mean anything for a championship this year, but hopefully he gets that opportunity to come back next year and show what he's capable of, and hopefully he's a part of the playoff grid. Because if he were in the playoff field this year, with how he's been running lately, I don't know. I mean, I think you would have to put him up there with the Christian Eckeses and Corey Heims of the world as potentially a championship favorite. When you think of where the championship race is, how he's racing on these types of tracks, and the string of momentum that he's carrying right now, he would be, I think, certainly at least in that championship 4 fights. Your point, Brandon, about Martinsville. If he were in the playoff grid, he'd be locked into a round of 8. All he would have to do is go win Martinsville, and then as we saw last year with that championship 4 in the Truck Series, you just have to get there, and then who knows? I mean, all hell can break loose. Who knows what's going to happen if you're championship eligible going into that race? So Layne Riggs has proven now that he has the talent, he has the capability, and he certainly has the team behind him. He's just got to do that at some point in the first half of the year, first 2/3 of the year, really, to get into the playoffs, and then he can maybe go on a championship run in 2025. So we'll see if he can do just that next year.
Yeah, not only is he peaking at the right time, well, at the wrong time, but if he were in the playoffs at the right time, but I also just look at that team he's with, Ben, just the front row, having that experience in the Truck Series playoffs with Zane Smith. I think he would have had so much potential if it had just been a hair before, because he's got one of the best teams in the garage there to go for a championship if it were possible. Unfortunately, it's not going to be this year.
Well, from the front of the non-playoff drivers part of the point standings to the back of the playoff grid, from 11th to 10th in the standings, if you will, Ben Rhodes, your defending Truck Series champion, the guy who's won 2 out of the last 3, is currently on the outside looking in here, heading into Kansas, the elimination cutoff race, and you see him finishing 27th. Not a good night for him at Bristol. Brandon, I know we've talked at times about how Ben Rhodes necessarily won those championships, maybe not going out and winning it the same way Corey Heim potentially should have won it last year, just dominating, winning multiple races, but being in the right place at the right time, doing everything he needed to do with the system everybody's given. But still, he has won 2 of the last 3 titles. Are you surprised that he is on the outside looking in and is in danger of not even making it out of the round of 10?
I couldn't wait to answer this one. Doesn't surprise me in the least. Ben Rhodes is in peak performance. This is right where he wants to be, right where we least expect him, because this is how he's won the last 2, or 2 of the last 3 championships, is being just good enough to advance, just good enough to make to the next round. Yeah, this is exactly what Ben Rhodes is good at, and in Thor Sport as well. So I see. I'm going to go ahead and put it out there. I'd say he's going to, with this method, he's going to somehow win the championship again, and it's not going to be in pleasant terms. We're not going to like it. It's going to be like, what was that? But here he is. Here he comes again. Ben Rhodes coming to get another title. He's right where he wants to be.
Well, he wouldn't be the first Thor Sport driver to do that, Brandon. You think back to what Matt Grafton did.
Matt Grafton, 2019.
Yeah, Grafton was very similar. And then what I love about Grafton is he won back-to-back titles in 13 and 14, only winning a couple of races. Of course, we didn't have the playoffs back then. But then in 2015, he went off and won like 6 races and didn't win the title that year. And then the playoffs get introduced, and a few years later, he doesn't win a race all year, but finishes whatever it was, 2nd or 3rd at Homestead to clinch the championship without winning a single race in a playoff format that puts winning above everything else. I mean, only Matt Crafton would be capable of that. And maybe Ben Rhodes, maybe his Thor Sport teammate as well. We'll have to wait and see. Ben Rhodes has won plenty of 1.5-mile races before. I don't know if he's got something in the works here that he can pull out at Kansas to try to advance, or if he can make up enough points. We'll have to wait and see. It certainly is within his range, I think, if he picks up enough stage points, because he did have a 9th place finish in Milwaukee, so it's not like he's had 2 completely terrible races to open up this round. But again, I guess you look at his resume and you would think, 2 of the last 3 titles, a little bit surprised that he's on the outside looking in. But then you think about how he's won those championships and how he's been running this season. Only 2 top 5s to his name here, if I'm looking at this correctly. 3rd at Darlington, 5th at Charlotte. And that's it. maybe it's not too much of a surprise that he's been at the back end of our 10
Yeah,
playoff drivers.
the formula works for them. They'd be crazy to change it, right? So keep it up.
We
I'd
will.
say he's my pick for Kansas.
All right. Well, we'll make a note of that, and we'll play it back here if we do get a Ben Rhodes win when we go to Kansas here coming up. In the meantime, let's talk about another driver who could be in the mix for championship this year. Nick Sanchez, strong. There we go. Fifth place finish this weekend for him at Bristol. He was in the news this week. He's got a little bit of experience with this Xfinity team. He did a few races at the end of 22 for Big Machine Racing. Of course, we talked last week on the show about Parker Kligerman stepping away from full-time competition. Now we know who's going to fill that seat for next year. It's going to be Nick Sanchez. So, Brandon, what's your reaction to that news?
My first reaction was I think this is a really good fit. A really good fit for Scott Borchetta, excuse me, and Big Machine Racing. For a guy like Nick Sanchez, he already gives me Parker Kligerman vibes, I guess, like a younger Parker Kligerman, I guess. So it does make sense to put him in that spot. And also, I like the progression for Nick Sanchez to not just get a front row motorsports cup ride automatically next year because of some, just because he had the money or something. But I'm glad it's this natural progression from one series up to the next, at least for Nick Sanchez. I don't know. It's not going to be. Let's. I don't know if they're going to be competitive for a championship, but possibly a win somewhere. I don't know if I've seen the speed outside of road courses to justify that. And I think the talent level with Parker Kligerman on the road courses is a lot of what got them in those positions. So I don't know what the skill set is going to be like for Nick Sanchez paired up with the 48 team, but we'll have to see. It's a really interesting combination though, and I think it's the right move.
Yeah, I think Parker's really done everything. Excuse me, everything but win a Xfinity Series race in the almost 2 seasons he's gotten in that car, and we'll see. He still has several opportunities, including the Roval, half road course at the very least, like you mentioned, Brandon. So could very well see him parking in victory lane. Could see him win a championship still, for all we know. We'll have to wait and see. But I think I'm with you. I think this is a good combination. I think Big Machine could do a lot worse. I'll say that much. I think when you look at Nick Sanchez's results this year, maybe hasn't been quite as flashy as our top two championship protagonists. But when you look past Corey Heim and Christian Eckes, if you ask me who would be, if we had to come up with a big three, if we had to come up with a third driver who would be a potential favorite for the championship four, I would look at the guy who's third in points right now, and that is Nick Sanchez. So, a couple of wins to his name and in or around the top five as often as not. I think he's certainly ready for a step up to Xfinity. And to your point, Brandon, and he's done a few races with the team, albeit a couple of years ago. I think it's a great fit, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they can do next year.
With all due respect, with the Nashville ties with Big Machine, I'm just glad they didn't go with Ty Dillon. That's all. I'm glad they didn't just go with who they know in Music City.
Yeah, and
could be a lot worse.
Yeah, the Childress Alliance there. Well, I mean, I don't know, Brad. Since you brought it up, I don't have it in the scripts, but the news did break shortly.
You did, yeah.
Yeah. What's your reaction to the news of what happened over at Rackley War? But Ty Dillon's not going to be in that seat the rest of the year.
It's I wish the best for that team because they're pretty local, and so they got to do what they've got to do. I understand, but not too surprised. Just I wish better for that team, and if they've got to pull who they've got to pull and do what they've got to do, that's fine.
Yeah, Dawson Sutton will be in that car or that truck, I should say, for the remainder of the year. His ARCA start, his first career ARCA race, and again, we'll pull the results back up here for you. Last of the starters, again, there was a 34th entry that was a DNS, but that's again, stay tuned for your last car article if you want to learn more about Dawson Sutton's journey here. Again, this is why we wait sometimes, because news comes out at the beginning of the week and the racing reference results get tweaked a little bit. I don't publish my articles as soon as the race ends like Brock does. I usually wait a few days to see if there are any further implications that come of that. But guess it's the benefit of waiting a little bit for this one because it's a great opportunity for Dawson Sutton. But at the same time, I know Ty Dillon was really looking forward to this opportunity this year, and again, it just hasn't gone the way that he would have liked. But and again, we had this last year. We thought he was a lock for the 16 colleague car. It sounded like things were progressing in that direction. He has done a few races for that team this year. We'll see. Those rumors are coming up again. I have a feeling we'll see Ty in some capacity in NASCAR in 2025. But as for right now, as for this opportunity, it's come to an end, and we'll see. Again, not the first time for Rackley War either, because Matt DiBenedetto, in a year where he made the playoffs, didn't get to finish the season for that team either. So we'll have to wait and see.
It's one of those things. As sure as the sun rises and sets, you can be certain that a Dillon will be in NASCAR for the foreseeable future. It's just a matter of where.
Yeah. Well, I think Ty's situation is a little bit more fluid than Austin's here. I think Austin is a pretty set future at RCR.
For
Again,
sure.
whether it's behind the wheel or as an executive, I think he's set there. Ty is obviously. I mean, we saw Ty in a Joe Gibbs car for a few races a few years ago. So I mean, he's certainly. I think to his credit, he's wanted to be a little bit more independent and not necessarily rely on just being able to fall back on his grandfather's team. I know the results haven't necessarily followed even as much as they have for Austin, who, for all the crap he gets, has at least won 5 Cup Series races, is at least a Xfinity and Truck Series champion. So certainly not wishing any ill will on Ty Dillon. Hope the best for him. Hope that he can find a situation that leads to success for him, because unfortunately, clearly, that wasn't meant to be this year with this team. Well, all right. Well, let's move on now to the Xfinity Series race. And again, a little bit of a surprise here. We came into this weekend here, but cutoff race before the playoffs begin for Xfinity. Much like was the case for Connor Zilic, Justin Allgaier really just needed to survive to win the Xfinity Series regular season championship. But Cole Custer made up a 46-point differential to win the race and steal that title with his win at Bristol, although it is worth pointing out when you factor in playoff points and bonus points and stage points and all those points that culminate in the playoff system that we have here, Justin Allgaier still does lead the playoff standings post-reset. But Cole Custer is your official regular season champion in Xfinity. So, Brandon, what was your reaction to seeing Custer take the win on Friday night and steal that title from Justin Allgaier when it looked like he had it firmly in his grasp?
It just shows me the potential that we still have with fresh, cold custard in his career. Being able to steal the regular season title. Of course, we know the picture we get sometimes with regular season titles whenever they hold up the trophy. It's like this. But all that aside, that is really, really impressive for him to steal that. And also just the assurance he has with his Haas factory team going into next year at the Cup level. That's got to make him feel good as far as job security. So less worried about that. He had to come back down to Xfinity after having to leave Stewart Haas. But now, in a cosmic sort of way, coming back to it, this has to feel good, and I'm sure he's hoping he can solidify their decision with another Xfinity Series championship.
Yeah, certainly big things coming on the horizon for Cole Custer next season. But in the meantime, I'm sure he's looking to defend his Xfinity Series title and go out of the Stewart Haas racing era, at least with bang here in the Xfinity Series. And this is a good first step to doing that. Of course, like you mentioned, Brandon, I wish I had that Truex and Cole Pearn image saved here. I don't have that here.
It's right here. Right here.
I can find that here later on in the show. But yeah, I mean, it's certainly it's nice, I guess, for Custer for his playoff chances and provides him some additional playoff points. But we all know that the ultimate prize is waiting at the end of the season. That's what Custer is going after. And again, what a resume that would be, to have 2 Xfinity Series championships under your belt after taking that step back down from the Cup Series to kind of reinvent his career in Xfinity, and then to come back to Cup. I mean, talk about a wave of momentum you'd be carrying from your Xfinity Series success. I think that would certainly have the potential to do wonders for his career. We'll see how strong the Haas factory team is in 2025. But as for right now, a good first step for Cole Custer, and maybe a more frustrating second step, you could say, for the guy who finished in second place. And Brandon, I got to tell you, this is starting to get a little spooky to me. How many times are we going to talk about Yeah, I know Halloween's still a month away here,
Ooh.
but I mean, how many? What does Sheldon Creed have to do, man? How many times are we going to talk about him finishing in second place? This seems like Daniel Hemrick 2021 on steroids. Although we all know how that season ended. I don't know. Is this just all going to culminate to Sheldon Creed winning at Phoenix and winning the championship, or could he pull a Matt Crafton? Could Sheldon Creed win the Xfinity Series championship with 17 second place finishes to his name and not be a winner of a NASCAR Xfinity Series as he's lifting that trophy?
Whatever happens, I gotta stick with what I did earlier and say Sheldon Creed's not gonna do it, so I can eat crow later. Yeah, whatever. But it is fun to watch. It's fun to go through these weeks and Sheldon Creed be on the second pattern. Definitely not as bad as Riley Herbst before he finally took care of it at Las Vegas last year. He wasn't, you know, getting just close every time, but he was poised for a win and without a win, and we kept wondering when and how that was going to happen. Championship didn't come with it, but with Sheldon Creed though, it's a different story. He definitely could come in and Daniel Hemrick this championship this year, or to your point, he could somehow take the title by not winning at all. So it'll be interesting either way. I'm really excited to see what he does, and I actually do hope he proves me wrong. Just like last year with Riley Herbst.
Yeah, well, again, you look at his results; it really is remarkable. And six of those second place finishes have come this year alone in that Gibbs 18 car. Where again, it was the same story 3 years ago with Daniel Hemrick, and Daniel Hemrick, I think, tied the record with Dale Jarrett for most second place finishes, and he's gone on to have a number of second place finishes since that win. He's still looking for his second win, not just in the Xfinity Series, but in NASCAR as a whole. At least Creed has some Truck Series wins and a Truck Series championship to fall back on as well. But he's not just broken that record; he has shot well past it. Daytona, Sonoma, New Hampshire, Michigan, and then the last two weekends back to back at Watkins Glen and Bristol, he has come up just one spot short of parking in victory lane. So again, we keep saying it. It feels like it's inevitable. If you're running this well, at some point, it's got to be a situation where you're Alex Bowman at Pocono and Kyle Larson's going for his fourth win in a row, and he inexplicably loses a right front tire heading into turn 3 on the last lap. At some point, Lady Luck has to be on your side, and you're going to win a race by any means necessary, or however you can take them. But it hasn't happened yet. We're here once again on this show with another Sheldon Creed runner-up. It is truly remarkable how this is unfolding here, and we'll see if he can get that win before Phoenix at Phoenix. Like I said, maybe it doesn't even come at Phoenix, but maybe he's lifting a championship trophy instead. Who knows what's going to happen with this system here in the NASCAR playoffs. All right, let's move on now to the back end of the top 10 here. Dale Earnhardt Jr., at least he got to finish this race. Obviously, it was disappointing what happened with his car fire last year, but certainly no shortage of chaos with his radio and having to swap his helmet out and everything. But fortunately for him, he was still able to come back and get a top 10 finish out of it, racing with Ryan Truex and car that he owns and Brandon Jones at the end there. But Brandon, it sounds to me like he is potentially hinting that this may have been his last race, maybe leaving the door open for 2026. But it sounds like at least next season he's not going to do one of these one Xfinity Series races. And stat that was brought up on the broadcast this week, you can trace it back to 1996 across the top three, really the top two national series. That's what I want to see Dale Jr. do, actually. I want to see him run a truck before he completely hangs up the helmet. But he started at least one race in NASCAR's top three divisions for, I guess, my goodness, the last 29 seasons in a row now. So if he doesn't run a one-off race next year, it's really going to be truly the end of an era in that regard. So what did you think of seeing Junior back out on the track again Friday night? And if this is the end, how are you going to remember this post Cup Series semi-retirement one-off era for Dale Jr. in the Xfinity Series?
I mean, once again, he proved that he's an absolute Wild West cowboy that, whenever duty calls to go for the one-off, he can come in with some terrible circumstances and still show that he's one of the best to ever do it. I mean, the whole helmet situation, sorry, I might have froze there. The whole helmet situation had me like, wow. Like, this dad, coming into the car, has to prepare all, months and months in advance, if not the whole year prior. So, okay, I got to get back in this, got to do this, and race against a bunch of these kids again, who do this all year long, and just the conditioning that goes into being able to do that again alone has always impressed me every single year that we've had the Hellman's 88 and Dale Jr. doing his one off. But also just the unscripted scenarios that any driver has to deal with any day of the calendar year. But Dale Jr. in his one off having a radio issue with his helmet and having to go through all of that while the car is moving and put it back on and all this stuff, and still being able to finish well, that's just storybook stuff. No matter where he finished there, that was a great finish there for Dale Earnhardt Jr. And just a great race to come back into it. Yeah, with seventh place finish. He says he's focusing on TNT next year, which I think is all power to him. That's great. I want TNT to be fantastic. I want Prime to be fantastic. I want it all to be highly competitive, and to basically show NBC and show Fox up and make them shiver, and think, wow, we've got to step up our game. We have competition again, and we can't just do what we've been doing and get by. We actually have to pay attention to our quality control. So yeah, I hope they have a great job, not only on the camera crew, and not only production, but also up there in the booth. So I'm really glad that he's, even if it is ending a streak, I'm glad he's taking his time with it and focusing on it. And if that means being out of the car, that's okay. But 2026, he did give us a little tease of maybe might do this again. But if I had to assume, I'd say, as far as the one race a year calendar is concerned for Dale Jr., I think we definitely are on the latter end of it. It's just whenever he decides that is going to be. I definitely think we are in the last couple of years of that venture, though.
I hesitate to even bring this up because I'm going to make both of us feel old. I'm going to make the people watching feel old. But Dale Earnhardt Jr. does turn 50 next month.
Yeah.
So he's certainly, which again is remarkable to think about the fact that he's outlived his father and is approaching 50 years old is just doesn't feel like that much time has passed by here. But like I mentioned, it's been for the better part of 3 decades he's been running NASCAR in the top 3 divisions to some extent. So when you think of it like that, I guess it's kind of remarkable that he still has been doing this for the last couple of years. And I don't know. I mean, in an alternate timeline where his concussions don't happen, I think he probably would have stayed in Cup until maybe 2019 or 2020 or so. Probably would have had one more contract extension in him. But I think he made the wise decision to step away from the full-time grind after that second bout with the serious concussions, where he had to basically sit out the entire second half of the year in 2016. So again, it's unfortunate to think about the what ifs, in terms of how his career ended, but
prolonged his career by doing so. So we're certainly thankful that he did. He did stop when he did.
Yeah, and again, it's been great to see him, once or twice a year the last several years. I know I was going back and forth with Matthew Owens this week. I do agree with his point that probably not ideal for the sport's most popular driver or most well-known driver to be somebody that's mostly retired, that only comes out of retirement once a year. But I don't think that's on Dale. I think that's more on NASCAR and our current star drivers for not putting themselves out there more in the sport for marketing them as well as they were able to capitalize on Dale Jr. and his fan base. So. But we'll see. I mean, it's certainly going to be an issue if he steps away next year. I know he said, the sponsorship with Hellman's has played a big part in what he's been doing the last several years, and maybe he's not going to need to do that next year. And obviously with him, we haven't seen him on the NBC broadcast this year because he's been contractually bound to Turner and Prime for 25 and beyond here. So we'll see. I selfishly, as somebody who grew up rooting for that Budweiser car and then the Amp Energy National Guard car in the Hendrick days, I'm going to miss not seeing him out on the track, going forward here, whenever this run does come to an end. Like you mentioned, Brad, I think we're certainly on the back end of them. But again, it amazes me how he comes out here once a year and is immediately able to take the fight to the drivers that are out here, if not every week, at least the Ryan Truexes of the world who have won a couple races this year, who have multiple starts to their name, at least on a part-time basis, and he's fighting with them, for a top 5 or top 10 as if he never left. And I think
Yeah,
that's
and with
again
multiple different
sort of
venues
highlighting the
as well.
importance. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So with multiple different venues as well. I mean, not only Bristol, but you look back at Richmond, he still put up quite a fight,
For sure.
almost in
Yeah.
contention for the win.
Yeah. I remember the very first year he did it, 2018. I think he led the most laps in that Richmond race and probably would have been on a path to win it had, some of the late cautions not fallen the way that they did. I think he still ended up with like a fourth place finish or something that night. Um, so again, yeah, I mean, every year, obviously he had the issue with the car last year in this race, but he's always been competitive. And I think that's part of what he's realizing too, is that maybe it's getting harder to continue to be this competitive, and he doesn't want to, all due respect to, I mean, Morgan Shepherd was doing this well into his 70s, with his own program and everything, but obviously he was on a shoestring budget and was just doing it out of pure passion of the sport. I don't know if Dale Jr. wants to be doing this for the next 20 to 25 years here. I think if he's going to continue to do it, I think he wants to do it while he's still able to come in here and run as well as he's been. And I think he's perhaps recognizing that those days are certainly, coming to an end here, and he doesn't know how much longer he's going to be able to do that. So in the meantime, just run the occasional Cars Tour race or a late model deal, maybe the Xfinity stuff. This is going to be the last hurrah here. But if it is, nice way to go out here fighting with, Ryan Truex. Of course, he and Martin Truex Jr. have such a great relationship and go way back. So cool to see the two of them fighting on track. And, we'll see. We'll see if he's back in 26 or not. But if this is the end, it's been a heck of a career.
I will say, I think I can see the short track stuff lasting a lot longer than anything on the main national tour side, though, since especially with the ownership partnership and things like that.
Yeah, I think he's going to be doing that well into his 50s, at least another half decade or better part of a decade.
Come on, Kenny Wallace, you can do it in your 60s too.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Kenny Schrader.
Ken Schrader, his best buddy. Yeah,
still racing. Yeah, so yeah, certainly not stepping out of the car entirely here. But as for Xfinity, we'll see if it's it or not. All right. Well, speaking of 2025, one more piece of silly season news here, and then we'll go into the end of the show. But we've been talking about Harrison Burton Brandon and where he might end up next season. We got our answer this week. He's going to be full-time in the AM racing car in 2025, so he is ultimately going to take that step back down to Xfinity. But as we've seen with Cole Custer, it's worked out quite well for him. Harrison, much like Cole in that regard, I guess, getting that one Cup Series win before having to take that step back. How do you think he's going to fit in next year at AM Racing? Obviously, the Haley Deegan situation didn't work out great this year, and now they're just trying to get through the end of the year with a rotation of drivers. But do you think that Harrison might be able to come in and provide some stability for that program and maybe even be in contention for some race wins next year?
Definitely. I think he's going to provide some stability, especially for just forward performance in the Xfinity Series, which I think is something besides Cole Custer that they've really been struggling to find. And Joey Logano's performance right after the Deegan incident at Chicago sort of gave me hope for the AM racing car. And then also, I think Josh Berry was in it the weekend after that. Those sort of gave me some hope with, okay, as far as AM Racing's performance, what are they capable of with someone behind the wheel that, maybe it just plain and simple has some more experience. Harrison Burton might be able to fulfill that role. And I've sort of been waiting on him to come back to the Xfinity Series because I look back to 2020. That's where he did so well. And, you mentioned it, very similar of just getting one win in Cup like Cole Custer before going back to the grind and coming back to earth, I guess. Just going to have to capitalize on this opportunity. I think he can, and he definitely will be an improvement for AM Racing, not a detriment. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, again, it's tough to look at this year's results for that car and think, that maybe Harrison's going to be in contention for wins next year. But I think to your point, there has been a little bit more speed. You would expect, regardless of if it's Deegan or not, just any Xfinity Series driver. I would hope that when a Cup Series driver, particularly a Cup Series champion, gets behind the wheel of that car, you know that you're getting the absolute maximum out of whatever the equipment is going to be capable of giving you. And we know now, of course, they have that technical alliance with Stewart-Haas, so it shouldn't be too surprising that Joey Logano ran as well as he did and was as fast as he was when he was in that car. So we'll see. I think it's a great opportunity for Harrison. At least he's going to be racing somewhere, and I think certainly after Daytona, I think that it would have been a crying shame if he had been on the sidelines to start next year. But this I think could be a very good opportunity. Still within the Ford family. Maybe you don't necessarily want to burn any bridges in this sport. There might be an opportunity down the road to get back into Cup. But I to your point about how he ran in Xfinity, I think he set the world on fire in 2020 with all those wins, and 2021, by no means was terrible, but wasn't breaking into victory lane like that. But then I think, got that Cup opportunity in 22. I think they saw the next gen era as a situation where everybody's going to be a rookie in some sense. So this is probably as good a time as any to get him in a Cup car. But he probably did need a couple more years in Xfinity before he made that jump. Now he's going to get those couple of years. So we'll see if he can go down the Cole Custer path and compete for success in Xfinity, and then maybe that leads 2027, 28 or so. Maybe a Cup opportunity opens back up for him.
Yeah, I think we were all sold in 2022 about it's going to be a level playing field. I mean, certainly we did have a record number of winners that year, but also we found out very quickly when you come to certain places, definitely not the case of a completely level playing field, maybe as it was being advertised.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, we're coming up on, we're actually just over an hour time here for our show tonight. So we're going to wrap it up. Brandon, I think we have multiple shining moments, each of us here on this Motor Monday, but what are your shining moments here during the One Shining Moment segment?
I forgot what I could tell you would be a one shining moment, but whatever that was, that. Also, Trackside Live with Kenny Wallace and John Roberts at Bristol, I saw was just very, very packed because of Kenny always posting things. So really, really proud of that. And also just the crowd at Bristol was fantastic. So that's good. But my one shining moment primarily was a friend of mine that we have with Crossland Racing with our sim team. We have done the 24 Hours of Daytona in 2021, and then just this past January in 24. Well, he's actually a real life race engineer with Brian Herta Autosport and the TCR class with the Hyundai with Mark Wilkins. And he just got to kiss the bricks weekend with the battle on the bricks. That's Hudson Asa. So congratulations, Hudson, on getting to kiss the bricks there with Mark Wilkins. That's a big accomplishment.
I thought you were going to bring up Landon Lewis as well. That was the path I was.
Yes, Landon Lewis. Thank you.
Yeah,
just didn't type it out.
That's all right, but we certainly covered him during that segment. Strong run for him, second place finish, almost breaking up that 18-28 duopoly here that we've seen in the ARCA Menard Series this year in the 97 car. So good run for him. I want to take time here during the shining moment to issue a public apology to Franco Colapinto and Williams. I said on this show the last couple of weeks that this was going to be a true test for them and that I did not expect points or a particularly great run for them in Singapore because of how that track has been a weakness for Williams compared to the Monzas and Azerbaijans of the world the last couple of years. Franco didn't get it points, but he came a heck of a lot closer than I expected him to with an 11th place finish, and even had Checo Perez on the radio, who was in a much faster Red Bull car, saying that Colapinto was doing a great job out there and made life very difficult for him as he was trying to get around the Williams. So well done to them, and well done to the entire Williams team stepping up their game over the last few weeks, and Franco in particular being thrown into that seat mid-season and silencing the doubters, so to speak, with the amount of points he's picked up already, the amount of strong finishes he's picked up already in just 3 races. Eager to see what he can do the rest of the season in that car. Also want to give a shining moment to Dave Blaney, the father of Ryan Blaney, the man who I still believe to this day should have won the 2012 Daytona 500. I believe is one of the best drivers NASCAR Cup Racing has ever had, who never broke through in victory lane in that series. But he won a dirt race at Sharon Speedway this weekend and then parked in victory lane and retired on the spot. What an absolute legend. So Dave Blaney still got it. But again, like we just talked about with Dale Jr., going out on top, going out knowing that you can still get behind the wheel of a race car and show what you're capable of. Dave Blaney, again, he didn't not win a cup race because of a lack of talent. It was more, I think, a lack of circumstance and opportunities. It didn't open up for him in his career in the same way they have for his son Ryan, who of course is a defending Cup Series champion. But great to see Dave still out there. I guess we're not going to see him out there on the dirt track anymore. But what a way to announce your retirement in victory lane. That's certainly worthy of a one shining moment for me.
Way to go, Dad.
All right, and that's going to do it for our show here tonight. So thank you all so much for tuning in, sticking with us for the last little bit more than an hour here. And be sure to subscribe to the Grid Network. Follow us on all our social media platforms, X/Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitch, LinkedIn, Threads. And like I just mentioned, most importantly here on YouTube, thank you all so much for your continued support throughout the 2024 season. If you really liked what you saw tonight, you can take a few minutes after the show and consider joining our Patreon. You can join, let's get the list up here. There we go. Colin, Michelle, Mark, Robin, David, and Matthew in investing in the Grid Network to help keep us on the air throughout 2024 and into 2025 and well into the future. And if we continue to boost our support on Patreon, we can perhaps begin attending races on site on a more regular basis, and that will only continue to expand our coverage for you, the viewers. Or if you'd rather make a one-time donation instead, you can follow the link to buy me a coffee in the description box below. Any amount will help us continue to grow our motorsports media outlet. Or, like I mentioned at the start of the show, if you're watching us on YouTube, we now have super chats enabled as well. Now, Kobe Lambeth will be back on Wednesday night, along with Matt White, who's been out the last couple of weeks. Hopefully, Matt's going to be back as well. I hope he's feeling better. Josh Birch, they'll bring you Grid Tonight on Wednesday in just a little bit under 48 hours' time. I cannot guarantee, because I've teased it the last couple of weeks, but hopefully, keep your fingers crossed, we can get a Women in Motorsports episode in this week, because we have a lot to recap between ARCA and F1 Academy. Shout out to the young American Leah Block, a pair of fourth-place finishes at Singapore. So much more on that, hopefully later this week as well. And then more coverage from the Grid Network, as always, this upcoming weekend, pre-race wrap-up. And then we'll see you in just under 168 hours' time for another episode of Encore next Monday night. Brandon, any final thoughts before we sign off for this evening here?
No, other than hope to be back over there by next week. We'll see. And also, it's Kansas. Let's see what happens.
Lots to look forward to for sure. I want to just take a moment at the end of the show here. I know I'm not on wrap-up as much these days. I want to say thank you to Daniel Ricciardo for an incredible F1 career, 8 career wins, including the very first race I ever watched, or can at least remember watching from start to finish, the 2014 Canadian Grand Prix, and that epic battle with Nico Rosberg and the Mercedes issues that they were having and sneaking through to get that first win. He never seemed to win boring races, even his last win with McLaren at Monza in 2021. Who can ever forget that? And certainly one of the most popular characters in the F1 paddock. Again, it hasn't been officially confirmed, but if you looked at his body language, the body language of everybody at the RB team and in the Red Bull family, it certainly felt like his last race. And if it was his last race, what a way to go out, stealing the fastest lap point from Lando Norris. And you never know, that could be the difference. Maybe we'll talk about that on Grid Tonight, that debate coming up again with Red Bull having 2 teams here. But that's certainly not Daniel Ricciardo's fault. He potentially helping his old buddy Max Verstappen, his old teammate Max Verstappen in his championship fight, and going out with the fastest lap. That's very fitting, I think, for Daniel Ricciardo. So certainly wish him all the best. I want to see him come over here and run an Indy car or get in a NASCAR Xfinity car. I think Dale Jr. still has that open offer for him to get in a road course car at any possibility here. So we'll see what the future holds for him. I'm sure he's not done racing entirely. But thank you, Daniel Ricciardo, for a great F1 career. All right, for Brandon Crossland, I'm Ben Schneider. Thank you so much for watching our show tonight, and we will see you next week. Have a good week, everybody.